Hi everyone, my name is Michal. I am Techlead at Rouvy for the web platform, and I will share with you some quick story about how we use GraphQL for microservices. I will tell you what worked well and more so what didn't actually, and why we actually ended up ditching the first solution to our problem, and we decided to override it into something quite different. So let's jump in. The context for the talk, the context of Rouvy is that Rouvy is a platform for indoor cycling. We have an application that you use for the cycling itself, and behind this application there is a big platform of backend services and websites, a portal that you can use to go through your rides and so on, connect with your friends. And these services, they have REST APIs. We have Strapi. Strapi actually has a GraphQL kind of out-of-box API itself, which is quite significant for the topic that I will talk about. And also something that is pretty much a buzzword nowadays, it's a BFF, backend for frontend. Why backend for frontend? We have a website, actually multiple websites, and we need somehow consolidate our backend services, which obviously are microservices, into something that is unified and something that is allowing the developers of the web platform to use it with ease. We have decided to go for a GraphQL gateway, and we have decided to implement it via schema stitching using GraphQL tools stitching. For it to work, you obviously need to have some GraphQL backends to actually stitch some schemas to merge into one big schema. So Strapi has its own GraphQL. And for the rest of the services, we have decided to implement sort of adapters that will basically allow us to access the service with GraphQL, and in the end game allow us to do stitching for all the services together. Why is it important that Strapi has its own GraphQL? That's because in Rouvy we have quite a lot of content, and the content has a huge model. So actually leveraging the built-in GraphQL of Strapi allows us to save quite a lot of time and resources in development, or at least that was the idea initially. We wanted to reuse existing GraphQL of Strapi, and as I said, we wanted to express the REST services somehow unified for the use in the web platform. Also, the point of stitching is that it should do some kind of, automatical resolving of stuff, some kind of automagic to just make your life easier. But it may not be the case, right? It felt elegant, but we might have regret later. Let's get straight to the point. What went wrong? And that's the best part, right? So despite its appeal, stitching quite quickly began to show serious limitations in the setup that we thought out. We ended up duplicating logic across some of the adapters. For example, we had adapter for user authorized queries and another one for queries that were not authenticated. But these adapters were actually calling the same services in the background. And sometimes we needed both of these in a single query, which led to conflicts in the schema, conflicts in models, and so on. There is a solution to that. You can create like mock queries or dummy queries that are used for just to make the stitching work, but somehow it starts to feel kind of lost in translation. You know, why would you do that if stitching should just help you? Trivial changes may start getting complex, because instead of implementing changing few lines of code in one project, you need to go into sometimes three projects. You need sometimes to change the stitching configuration and so on. So it's just not that easy in the end. We have realized that we were building around the stitching mechanism instead of implementing actual business logic. You know, if we were to just do just a simple thing like add a new field to something, we always have to check, is there a conflict in some of the other adapters? Is the field already somewhere else in the schema? And even if we look at the unified schema, you can never tell in which of the subschemas the field is actually being resolved. You can see here that all these underscored queries, these are not like business cases. These are just to make stitching work. These are here because we have multiple backends that provide data for the same models, and just to make it work, you have to use queries that are just polluting the schema. Of course, there are ways how to get rid of them in the final schema, in the final product, but who does that, right? The other code example, you can see that this is actually the code from the gateway. The stitching mechanism should be automatic. It should do stuff by itself, but it doesn't. If you want to add something, you actually start running into issues that, as I mentioned previously, sometimes you have no idea where something comes from, where the field is resolved, so you have to start looking in some other project. On top of that, because developers are always under pressure from product owners, right? So hey, this is just a minor change. Why should it take so long? Why do I need to work on 3 projects to do that? Well, I don't have to. I can just implement the change in the gateway. The code here is actually, again, a snippet that I have taken from the stitching gateway. And there's actual business logic in this that is deciding whether the coins for completion or it's adding up coins from an event root and event itself, which is business logic. Even though it's simple, it's still some kind of business logic, and it shouldn't be. It should be somewhere else, and it isn't anywhere else because in the backend adapters, it wouldn't work by design of how we have designed the system around stitching. So yeah, adding business logic somewhere where it doesn't belong. The fact that we did have ownership of the backends didn't really do anything good for it, because it didn't reduce the complexity of the maintenance of the system. It sometimes made it even worse because stitching introduced just more obscurity to the problem. We have other teams working on the backends, and someone comes to us and tells us, hey, there's a new endpoint in this service, and can I just implement it somewhere? Because we have like small teams, cross-functional, and sometimes the platform developers, if they do some changes to some endpoints, they can come up to us and if it's simple enough, they can do the changes themselves. They can just shoot a pull request and we will tell them, okay, this works or this does not. But with stitching, with so many complexity in the project, this just wasn't possible anymore. So actually, we came to a point where we just said, let's screw this. We won't be maintaining this anymore. And we have decided to do quite the opposite. We decided for a single unified server where the server will be handling all the queries. Each query will have its own resolver. The resolver will be mapped to some backend service. I mean, service like a class, service like a function in code, and these services will be then calling the REST APIs of the backend services. Obviously, as I said, it was a great thing for stitching, or a great argument to do stitching, that Strapi has its own GraphQL API. Well, we don't have that anymore, but in the end, this wasn't like so bad to do it manually. Of course, it wasn't just all good to get rid of stitching. For some very simple cases or very straightforward cases where there was really good, like where we could tell which model should go where in which adapter, stitching was actually helping. With the unified solution, we don't have like any kind of magic anymore. So even for simple stuff, we need to write a resolver. Obviously, Strapi needs to be integrated manually, and so yeah, there is some more code to be done around these simple cases, but it gave us more control over the system as a whole, more control over the schema, more control about the logic, more control about caching, and also one model of how it all works. There is this technique in GraphQL that is called resolver chaining, and this is what we were using end-to-end now, because there's the schema, it's got queries, the queries are resolved into models, and the models are resolved into fields, and fields are resolved, well, into whichever backend provides the data for it. So it was now very clean. Although it was more code somewhere, it was much more clean, much less complex, much less magic, more reality. And yeah, also there are some obvious things like that if you run just one project instead of one, you have simpler life with observability and with operations, because now you are just running one project. It is much more better understandable where there are errors. You have single place to monitor for performance. If it's not working very well, if you put there some metrics, some logging, it's all in one place. But these are really obvious facts, so I wouldn't go into much detail here. Also, code quality definitely improves. You've got now you have really code that is focused on business problems. You get rid of the queries that are here just to make stitching work. Also, I think that in a lot of projects that are running for a long time, there is often issues with that code, because developers are afraid to delete something because they never know if it breaks something. And with the stitching that we had in place, that was the case all of the time, because we were always afraid: is this dummy query required somewhere or not? So with having just one single unified, very explicit project, this all goes away, because if you delete a field which has a resolver, you can just find out via static analysis that you don't need the code anymore. So some refactorings and cleanups in the code are getting much simpler. I wouldn't say that stitching isn't useful at all. It definitely does have its use cases. I would say that if stitching is the product that you want to implement, like if for some reason you would want to put together some existing GraphQL APIs that maybe you don't control, and you want to put them together like as a one unified schema, and this is actually your product to provide such unified schema, yeah, then stitching is a good fit, and it's even, you know, justifiable to do all the magic. Sorry, no, not all the magic, but to do all the configuration and all the hassle with working out how to do the stitching work. But it's not ideal if, I would say, just if you can afford to do it somehow else. Anyway, for us, stitching was just an obstruction to developer experience, to good developer experience. And when we moved to the unified project with explicit code, it gave us just more speed, it gave us ownership, and most importantly, we started to feel like that we are building the product, we are following the business logic, focusing on it, and not focusing to build around stitching itself. And that's it from me. And remember, keep going.